Joining us now is Democratic strategist and former New York State Senator David Carlucci. Thank you so much for joining us on Power Hour. I am really interested in getting your insights. First of all, what do you put the red wave down to? What went wrong for the Democrats?
Well, I think this is more of an issue of how Democrats lost rather than how Donald Trump won. The issue here is that we got our message muffled. The Democrats are the party of the working class, middle class, and our message should always be about how we strengthen the middle class and how we grow it. And instead, there were so many different things from different fractions of the Democratic Party that I think got mixed up in the message. And Donald Trump was able to be clear. And even though we don't know how he's going to do it, he said things like he's going to lower inflation. He's going to cut our energy bills in half. Many of us don't believe it, but while he was able to fit his slogans on a bumper sticker, Democrats were busy explaining and talking about how the Biden administration did well on many different things, but Americans just didn't feel it. So I think it's a matter of the message just not being concise and not really being where the American voters are right now.
Look, it's argued that the Democrats didn't have a strong candidate in Kamala Harris. This is an old clip, but I suspect it has something to do with why many voters didn't want to support her.
We have to stay woke. Like, everybody needs to be woke. and you can talk about if you're the wokest or woker, but just stay more woke than less woke.
Yeah. Look, Argentina's President Javier Milei argues that one of the reasons Trump was so successful is because he's against woke politics. And we saw Kamala Harris choose Tim Walz as her running mate, who is even further to the left with his track record. MSNBC has published an article arguing that the narrative that woke politics is why Trump won is nonsense. But what's your assessment? In my view, the Democrats moved far too far to the left and really abandoned the centre.
Well, I think that's part of it, right? I think that if you heard Kamala Harris on the campaign trail, she didn't talk about the wokeism, right? But she had this record from a few years back, and a lot of Democrats were just painted with this broad brush of making woke the top priority. And I think that idea that we always have to be politically correct and can't have an honest, forthcoming conversation without announcing your pronouns and all of that is something that is not effective when you're trying to expand the party. And I think for too long, Democrats have worried about sanitizing the party or purifying the party instead of expanding the party. And that's where we have to get out of the echo chamber in who we're talking to, just talking to ourselves and saying all the great things we want to do. Yes, there's many things that we want to accomplish, but we have to stay focused like a laser on the top issues of the day. And those are bread and butter issues, right? Those are the economic issues. And every time we stray away from that economic message, we lose. And it's easy to play Monday morning quarterback, I know, but there's a lot of different things going on here. And I wouldn't say it's necessarily Kamala Harris. It's just the message was muffled, and Donald Trump had that clear message, and we had this extreme wokeism as an anchor around our neck. Even though it's not the majority of our party, I think we were painted with a broad brush of the extremes of our party. And we've got to do a better job of talking about how we're a big tent with a lot of different priorities, but our main priority is growing the middle class and making sure people have a pathway into the middle class and beyond.
The Harris campaign is seeing growing scrutiny over its spending strategy. The Harris campaign went through more than $1 billion in spending. There are reports that the campaign is at $20 million in debt. Of course, with the benefit of hindsight, where did they go wrong with spending? Was there too much focus on celebrities? What should they do differently?
Well, it's really hard to say without seeing where all this money went exactly. And it's hard because in a campaign, you throw everything against the wall because you never know exactly what strategy, what tactic actually worked. So you can never say that for sure. So you try everything. And the Kamala Harris campaign, they had the benefit of raising a ton of money. And they had that advantage throughout the campaign. And I think sometimes when you have that advantage, you rest on your laurels, you maybe overspend, and it looks like that might have been what happened. But overall, I don't think this is too damaging of an issue. It's a small amount of money compared to the amount of money that was spent, and they'll easily be able to make that up. But I think what they need to do, and the whole Democratic Party has to look carefully at what do we think worked, what didn't, and where should we be investing our money. But most importantly, it's always message over money. We have to refine that message, just like we're sharpening the tip of an arrow, because it'll be easier to penetrate if we have that sharp message. It doesn't matter how much money you spend. You could beat people over the head with it, but if it's not resonating, if it doesn't make sense, it's not going to work with all the money in the world. So that's where we got to get down to the basics and talk about our true north, which is growing the middle class and expanding our economy.
I'd argue it's not a small amount of money. It's still $20 million in debt. It's
yeah, but compared to $1 billion spent, I mean, that's
yeah,
comparatively.
exactly. You've got $1 billion.
Right,
what's another 20 million? I don't know how well that would go down with Democrat donors. But look, talk to us about the future for the Democratic Party. A new poll shows that Kamala Harris is still the top choice to be the party's nominee for the 2028 presidential election, with 41% of likely Democratic voters reporting that they think she should run again. Would she be your top choice?
Well, hey, look, Kamala Harris ran an excellent campaign, and myself and many people, like you saw in that poll, are happy with Kamala Harris and would love her to be our president. So if the election was today, of course, we would love Kamala Harris to be president. But 4 years is an eternity in politics. And I think we'll have people rising up that we're not even talking about right now. And I hope that is the case. We need to be the party of change. We can't be constantly just protecting the status quo. We need to defend the institutions that work, but always strive to make them better. And we need to be expanding our party and looking for a new generation of leaders. We have that opportunity now. We're going to have the election of a new Democratic National Committee chairperson. The whole administration is turning over, as we all know. So it's time for, I think, some new voices to rise up. But if we're having this conversation in 3 years from now, and Kamala is top of the ticket, that wouldn't be, I wouldn't be upset with that. But I think many things can happen from now until then. So I wouldn't put much stake into a poll that's done, just a couple of weeks after the election. But it does show, I think, that Democrats are proud of Kamala Harris. She did run a good campaign. She only had a few months to do it. She raised the money. She went to places she needed to go. But overall, I think our message has to be refined. And a candidate like Kamala Harris with that refined message, I think, can win in the future.